This is a call to order the July 7th, 2021 regular meeting of the Ducktown Council. This evening, we're returning back to our normal council meetings. There'll be no roll call vote. All council members must be present to participate in the meetings. We're no longer Zooming the meetings. They will be live streamed on YouTube. With that, I'd like to ask Council Member Sandy Whitman if he'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 2, public comments. A couple comments before we open up the floor. We do have a timer on public comments, and public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. You can also email comments in, but they must be received by the town by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, since we start the meeting at 6. And once again, if you email your comments in, they have to be limited also to 3 minutes, or they will be limited by the person reading your email. With that, I'll open it up for public comments. If anyone would like to address the council, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Christian, do we have any emails? There being no one, we're going to close public comments. We'll go on to number 3, the consent agenda. This evening, with consent agenda contains minutes for the May 5th, 2021 regular meeting, minutes from the May 19th, 2021 mid-month meeting, and minutes from the June 2nd, 2021 regular meeting. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item number 4, special presentation. Presentation of the introduction of our 2021 lifeguards, and I don't see Merrick out there.
What'd you do to him?
Did he send you in to introduce yourselves?
I'm sure they can handle it.
Do we know if he's coming?
He's passing Duck Deli.
He what?
He's passing Duck Deli.
Yeah, traffic is bad.
Well, they usually do their name in their hometowns.
Yeah. If you'd like to, why don't you start and introduce yourself? Mike?
Yeah.
You got a name, where you're from, and how many years you've worked for Merck?
My name's Caroline. I'm a captain with Surf Rescue. This is my 5th year, and I'm from Southern Shores.
I'm Jordan. This is my 1st year, and I'm from Enterprise, Alabama.
I'm Ellie. This is my 4th year, and I'm from Southern Shores.
I'm Gray. This is my 1st year, and I'm from Virginia Beach.
I'm Vince. This is my 4th year, and I'm from West Palm Beach, Florida.
I'm Liza. This is my 1st year, and I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
I'm Peter. This is my 1st year, and I'm also from Richmond, Virginia.
My name's Kaz. This is my 4th year, and I'm from Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina.
My name's AJ. This is my 1st year with Duck Surf Rescue, and I'm from Currituck.
I'm Eva. This is my 1st year, and I am from Richmond, Virginia.
I'm Gloria. This is my 2nd year, and I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina.
I'm Libby. This is my 2nd year, and I'm from Nags Head.
I'm Dalton. This is my 1st year, and I'm from Currituck.
My name's Wade. This is my 20th year. Living in Richmond, Virginia now.
We'll just wait a minute and give Merrick a chance to come in and say a few words, because I'm sure you'll want to talk about Joe.
Thank you for everything you're doing to keep our beaches safe. Really appreciate it.
Have the beaches been really crowded? How about the surf? Pretty rough? Anybody had to do any rescues yet this year? No? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
There he is.
There.
You're up.
You're up.
You can make a few comments. They've already introduced themselves, told us where they're from, and answered a few questions about you.
No, different, Mike. Oh. Yeah, they can just tell them.
Oh,
They've
they already introduced themselves.
Oh, they have?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then what am I doing here?
Well, you're just the leader.
My name is Merrick Dabrowski. I live in Kitty Hawk.
Well, if you figured that you'd want to make a few comments about them.
I've been doing this way too long. No, it's been really rough out there. I still have a bunch of people stuck in traffic. So we're kind of waiting on them. I think we got a really good crew. Every year I say the same thing. We get better and better kids every time. I think we just get the same kids. I just keep getting older and older. So they are really good kids, and they do a fantastic job. They're asked to step up, and they do. They do a great job with the patrons on the beach, and they also do an excellent job with the physical part of this job, which is huge, and continue to train throughout the summer to maintain those physical capabilities. So I'd like to give a hand to all the people that work there. This is just a portion. Because we handle a couple other towns, we probably have 3 times the number of people that are here. And they'll all rotate through, plus we're missing a few. Like I said, they were behind me, and I was stuck in traffic from Carolina Dunes. So don't hesitate to walk up to a stand and ask them where they're from and talk to them a little bit about their background, what they're studying in school. They'll be happy to tell you. Even though a lot of them are introverted, they will still talk to you. We all, I think, have those capabilities of being both introverted and extroverted, so they do too, and they recognize that. We have a makeup competition tonight. It wasn't scheduled tonight. When we scheduled this, this was a rain date. We never had a problem, and we're actually going to scoot out of here and go down to Kill Devil Hills to compete. And then next week, we're taking a couple handful of kids to Jacksonville Beach, Florida, to compete for the regionals, and we'll just continue to do what we're doing.
Well, good luck tonight. You had a couple of late arrivals, so maybe they can introduce themselves.
Which ones? The ones that just
Whoever came in through the door and they didn't get a chance to introduce themselves.
came in. Oh,
Oh,
Joe.
here comes another one.
Well, Chris Gillum, go ahead and tell them where you're from. Chris, where you go to school?
Hey guys, I'm Chris Gillum. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. This is my 3rd year. I get out of Virginia Tech.
And bring the mic over here. Young man.
Hi, I'm Joe Mulray. I live in Kill Devil Hills and semi-retired and do the lifeguard in the summer. Thank you.
Merrick, what can we do? What would you like to tell the public about what we can do, to get to be better behaved on the beach? Or is there anything you're running into this summer so far that you can alert us to, that we can make sure we're trying to tell people? For example, I know that during high tide, obviously they don't want the people being behind.
We can ask people to move. There's just not much room on the beach right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've had abnormally higher tides in the village area, but it's not just the village, it's actually all the way up. Some places just have a little bit more beach than others.
Mm-hmm.
I think north of the pier has a little more beach than others, but right in through the village when we're having these extreme high tides, and we're going to get it over the next couple days, probably through Saturday or Sunday.
Okay.
That it's just tough. I mean, how do you ask someone to shrink their footprint? And it's not easy. So we do the best we can as far as getting around them and try not to create too much of an issue. We still try to enforce the 15 feet from the toe of the dune, but in some places we're lucky to get 4 feet. As long as we can get the four-wheeler through, you know, we're pretty happy. So I don't have to get a truck through there. We'll just carry them over the dune.
Great.
I think you had another late entry over here.
Did you just come in? Where are you going to school this fall?
I'm going to Creighton Law School.
Very good.
Great.
And Driscoll and Kaz are cousins. Kaz is sitting behind him, and Kaz is my nephew.
Yes.
And Mason, Emmy.
Big crowd.
On the spot.
My name is Mason Johnson. I'm 20. This is my 4th year, and I live in Kitty Hawk. So.
Hi, my name's Emmy. I'm 19. I live in Kitty Hawk, and this is my 2nd year.
Well, good luck on the competition tonight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you again for everything you're doing.
Oh, thanks. You need anything else, sir?
No.
Let's
We
give him another hand.
appreciate your service, and good luck to all of you through the summer.
Thank you.
If we could just exit quietly.
Down to be honest with you, it's hard.
I was just informed from my social media expert to check out our website, check out the social media stuff.
Oh, okay.
She posts every day. She'll post a weather report. She'll post a beach report, and also just happenings around with the lifeguard service on the beach. So just check it out. I don't know how to do it. That's why I have her.
At Duck Surf Rescue.
I have her-
Instagram,
I have
at Duck
one more
Surf
person
Rescue.
that takes care of all that stuff, so I don't know what to do with it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Merrick. Thank you again. Moving on to item number 5, old business. Discussion consideration of the personnel policy. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our town manager, Drew Havens.
If you want me at the podium, I can go there, but otherwise I'll
You can sit there.
nudge the attorney as we talk through this. In front of you is a packet that's paperclip.
Is your mic on?
Yes. Yes, it is. So, as I mentioned in an email to you when I transmitted the personnel policies after they were approved, made a couple of changes to it, and those are reflected in the first document here. There was some question about the kind of the years of service bands and the wording of that, so we've cleaned that up, and you see the original and then the revised wording for the longevity and for vacation leave accruals. So that's page 17 and 21 respectively. So that's what's in the policies that we've called approved and transmitted to the staff. I also in that email mentioned to you as our team was re-looking at some of the policies, the bereavement leave, and this is on the reverse side of this page that you have. It needed the last sentence added to it, so in the revised, it has a sentence there that talks about bereavement leave full-time employees other than the basic 40-hour work weeks, folks. It just refers back to section 16 of the article where it defines how you do leave benefits for people that work other than 40 hours, and that would be police and fire who work a different schedule. Just for the sake of clarity, we wanted to add that. That sentence is also in the personnel policies that were transmitted to the staff. So this evening, what we'll be looking for, as we have two more things we need to discuss, but as we're looking at a motion, I'd like to approve those changes officially, because those were made based on the conversations we had, that the bereavement leave was something we just had neglected to put in there, didn't change the policy, but your vote didn't include any of that. We want to just be sure that we're completely legal, right?
That's correct.
Right. The next section is the second piece of paper in that package, and this is about harassment. There was some conversation when we talked about the personnel policies about, it's the third paragraph from the bottom of the front page there, and it's about how to report harassment. So you'll recall that we added, so rather than just saying the mayor, we changed that to any member of the town council or town attorney. There was some conversation among council, you may want to look at other wording. I didn't, our attorney had any other suggestions he wanted to make, or if you all had any other suggestions based on your rereads of this, but it gives a lot more pathways for report, which is the goal we had, and then I believe that's what I heard from you all as well. John, did you have?
On this particular point, my perspective and the background on this is that when this particular policy was being reviewed by MAPS, and then when I revised it as well, I added in a report could be made in addition to the town manager, could be made to the mayor. And then I think that when the council discussed this, the idea was, well, how about any member of council? That's consistent with why I added in the mayor. I wanted to make sure that an employee who had a complaint had an outlet other than just having to go to the manager. From my perspective, the ability to make a report to somebody who's not in the chain of command and doesn't have the authority to hire and fire is important. And so that's why I added the mayor. But for the same reasons, I can see adding council, any member of the council or the town attorney. Now, with regard to, I know that there was some discussion about this, with regard to members of the council aren't subject to any disciplinary action for failing to do something when they receive a complaint, unlike the manager or the attorney who serves at the pleasure of the council. But I think you have to balance the risk that a council member may receive a complaint and fail to do anything, with the harm that might cause, with the benefit to having an outlet that's broader than just the chain of command reporting structure. I think that's the balancing that y'all need to make, and that's a policy with a small p consideration from my perspective. But that was why I support this addition for the same reasons that I supported the addition that I made. I certainly support the addition of including the town attorney. But again, that's entirely up to the council to decide whether you want to keep that intact.
Just one question along those lines. I agree with what you're saying, John, but what if, in fact, the human resource officer is the one making the complaint? I mean, then it becomes a circle. So what do we do in that case? Does that need to be clarified?
I think that I think the first thing is that whenever a complaint is made to any recipient, whether it's to the manager, to the human resources officer, whether it's to a member of the council, the first thing you should do is to confer with the attorney and devise a way of addressing the complaint and rectifying the situation. That is really where the rubber hits the road, is when you receive a complaint or have a basis to know of a complaint, to then take appropriate action. And that kind of depends on some circumstances, and I think that it's hard to have a one-size-fits-all protocol stated in your policy, other than whoever receives it, unless it's a standard lowest level employee situation that can be dealt with within the chain of command. I think most always, particularly for a smaller local government like the town is, I think you're almost always going to need to consult with legal counsel to get advice on how to respond. So I think that would be the automatic protocol in any event.
John, would there be, I'd like to hear your perspective on adding a time, like where it says we'll make the human resource officer aware of the complaint. Can we put in a time like within 12 hours or 24 hours or something like that, so that whoever does receive the complaint isn't sitting on it.
I think that's beneficial. Again, that's an objective measure, knowing whether that's been done. I mean, you could put immediately or promptly, well, what does that mean? And that often depends on the circumstances, but I mean, in the situation in which you have a human resources officer who's out of town, that might be a problem. But I mean, these days, someone's almost always available by electronic means. And again, I'd like to think that if somebody was reached with a complaint of that nature, that they want to make sure that there was something being done back here to make sure it gets addressed, even in their absence. So I think if you have a definitive reporting time frame, I think that helps with that. I think 24 hours, 48 hours, 48 hours may be a little bit more reasonable. But I do think that something like that does give better guidance to the recipient of that as to what they need to do.
How about 2 business days?
2 business days would be good too.
Only because of weekends or whatever and availability of people.
Well, can I just understand exactly what we're talking about? Are we talking about the complainant or the person who receives the information?
Well, if you receive the information within 2 business days, you got to make sure the HR officer.
Because there is some stuff in our grievance policy that it talks about the time limit of reporting, which I wanted to get to. But this sounds more like you're talking about once someone's been told, what do they have to do? And I would agree that there's, a timetable is a good idea. I guess, I mean, because what they would have to do, as I say, if it went to a non-personnel person, a person that was a council member, for example, they should tell, the town attorney, is what I'm hearing from you today. So that should be done promptly and certainly within, within a certain time frame. I don't have a problem. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
right now.
that was my thought, but I'd rather see a very short, my preference would be to have a very short period of time. Like if you got a call at 10 o'clock at night, like you should be able to get in touch with someone by 10 the next morning. Like, I think, because I just don't, I don't see why there would be any reason to wait, any reason to delay. Certainly not 48 hours. I mean, maybe 12 is too fast, but, play it out. You get it at midnight, by noon the next day. I mean,
so 24 hours seems
24 hours is, in my mind, yeah. I mean, if it has to be 24, I would rather it be 12. But I guess my thought is if something comes forward to any of us or anybody that's seated in this position or the town manager, there is absolutely no reason to wait before bringing it forward to the town attorney. My preference would be to have it specified.
24 hours, I think, is reasonable. I think 12 may be too burdensome, just for a variety of reasons, but 24 is a whole day cycle. And even if it is over the weekend, again, we're like the law enforcement department. We're always working 24/7, so.
Okay, so I'm hearing 24 hours, but I'm also hearing now that this report has to be made to the town attorney and not the human resources officer.
Oh, well,
No, this is
did
the
I read
human
it wrong?
resource officer.
Yeah.
If it was one of us.
It's being conflated. So it
Yeah.
says human resources officer.
Human resource officer,
So
sorry.
The
Yeah.
only time that it would go directly to the town attorney is if the human resources officer is the
complainant.
The complainant.
The person being complained about. So
Okay, yeah, I misspoke.
in this
Yeah.
case, I'm the human resources
Right.
officer, unless otherwise I delegate that, and that's not likely to happen
Okay.
in the organization. So unless the complaint is about me, whoever receives the complaint, if Joe, as a department director, receives a complaint, he just needs to notify me within 24 hours. I don't think that's unreasonable. And if I'm on vacation and out of the country, I will have delegated somebody to receive or the authority to act in my stead. So chances are that's going to be Joe. So.
Yeah.
So we're still talking about, as the complaint's received, needs to make it to the human resource officer within 24 hours, a business day, whatever.
Within 24 hours. Okay.
So what we need to do is select a time. I mean, I think 12 hours is a little restrictive, I would say, minimum 24 hours.
As soon as reasonably practical, but in no case longer than 24 hours?
What if it, what if the complaint's received on a Saturday?
Like you said, I mean, if someone's calling you on a Friday night or a Saturday morning, like, there you go,
This is the type of thing that it really, I mean, if 24 hours is fine, really.
I would think so.
You could also just say the next business day, no later than the
It's up
next
to the
business
council,
day.
whatever you'd like to do.
And that would cover it. So if it's a Saturday evening complaint, by Monday, it's got to be communicated.
I'm better, I prefer 24 hours personally, just because I feel the way we operate is, if we're in a hurricane, we don't worry about the next business day on a hurricane. So everyone's kind of available, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to sit here and mince.
Let me
But
make a suggestion.
yeah.
Any further suggestions?
Any thoughts?
On that particular point, or
Well,
just,
we haven't decided what it should be.
oh, what do you guys think?
We'll take 24 hours.
I think the 24-hour thing is fine. The bigger question I have is, should the subject of the complaint be the HR person or the town manager or the attorney, then there has to be a clear path for that information to go around that person.
And that's where the council would come in, right? Is that how you read it?
Well, it could be the council, but the point is, if you have an employee that's gone to the department head is required under this document to report to the HR person. The HR person may be the person that is the subject of the complaint. So there has to be a different path for that department head to rectify the problem or to at least start the process.
One thing to consider is that as long as the human resources officer is the town manager, as long as he fulfills that function, he's the one employee who reports directly to the council. And so it makes sense for that report, if it's about the human resources officer, to be made to the council, to a council member or to the attorney in that event, because you're obviously the chain of command for that employee. In the event that you were to hire a separate employee or designate somebody as the human resources officer who reports to the manager, I think you may have to make a language change at that point to deal with that alternative. But until then, I think that language would cover it.
So we are hiring one, so based upon what Rob just brought up, you say it's really covered by default?
I think there probably needs to be some language, so just saying to Mr. Mooney's point, so if the HR officer / town manager is the subject of a complaint, the report will be made to the town attorney within 24 hours.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Now, we still need to go back and define the timeline. 12 hours, 24 hours, one business day.
I think 24 hours seems to be
24 hours is, I think that's what we just talked about.
Consensus,
Seems
yeah.
reasonable to me.
It's just so specific, as a business day. What if it's the 5th of July? Is that a business day or not? I mean, I feel like that avoids some gray if it's just an absolute 24-hour period.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else in this section 6 that council wanted to address?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, as I read it, the part about, the second to the last paragraph, all claims of harassment will be thoroughly investigated, that paragraph. information to be truthful, best of their knowledge. The town will endeavor to keep complaints, investigations, and resolutions confidential to the extent possible, but the town cannot compromise its obligation to investigate complaints. The tone of that sentence to me just feels a little, it's like, I just want to make sure that we're instilling in the employees the ability to feel very comfortable about bringing forth a complaint. So that's, when I read that, I was like, sort of like, we'll try to be confidential, but, just that little but in there just kind of bothers me. So, you could substitute it with an and, or just to put a period. The town cannot compromise its obligation to investigate complaints, but will preserve, but I don't know, something about encouraging employees to feel comfortable coming forward is important to me. And I don't know if this is exactly the way to put it, but it kind of comes up, so.
Well, to that concern, I feel like if you put a period after possible and then delete the remainder of that sentence, it accomplishes that. The remainder of that sentence is simply a statement of the town's legal obligation.
Exactly.
It really doesn't specify a procedure or a protocol or anything that, it doesn't give guidance on what has to be followed other than there's a duty to conduct an investigation into complaints.
Right.
Well, that's implicit in the whole policy, and that's what your legal obligation is anyway. So I don't think you lose anything by deleting that language if you're concerned about the.
Yeah, and then
tone
it's more emphasis on the fact that, that there will be confidential. But and where we say employees are expected to report claims of harassment in good faith, and maybe it's encouraged, or something along those lines, because the onus on the employee for the person who feels like they might have been harassed, I just want everyone to feel very comfortable. And so those are to me, that came across a little heavy-handed.
I think that sentence is actually directed perhaps more at a witness to the harassment, a witness rather than a victim.
Okay.
So if Don's being harassed by Drew, and I've seen this, then I'm expected to make that complaint.
Okay.
I don't think that's directed at the victim.
Oh, I see what you mean, expected to, okay, like, in other words, like.
You have an obligation, if you observed harassment, to make that complaint.
Okay, that's how you read that. All right, I get that. I think I was reading it more as the person who was the person harassed, but I can certainly understand what you're saying.
So
John,
I'm sorry.
does bullying fall in this category under harassment?
Bullying is a different form of conduct. It can be similar, but it does not necessarily constitute unlawful harassment. If Drew is a Bills fan and I hate the Bills and I make fun of him every time we talk about how bad the Bills are, he might accuse me of bullying him or harassing him, but that's not unlawful harassment because it's not harassment based on a protected characteristic. And so the same goes with bullying. Many employers, well, I don't know any employer that condones bullying. How you address that, though, is that most often a complaint of bullying is going to be cast as a complaint of unlawful harassment because the typical employee doesn't understand the distinction when they're upset and they want to make a complaint. So what you're going to find is that many complaints, in fact, my experience is that the majority of complaints made under this kind of policy really relate to some form of bullying or something like that, and they get handled the same way. Because even if it's not a legal issue, it creates a morale issue. It's a management issue, and so you want to make sure that there is an outlet to deal with that. But at the same time, you're not required by law to have a policy to address that like you are unlawful harassment.
So as we look at this section 6, the only change will be putting a time frame on that one sentence, and that is,
Taking out that last line.
well, anyone receiving a complaint will make the human resource officer aware of the complaint within 24 hours. Is that what you've done, Drew, there?
Right, and then if the HR officer or town manager is subject to the complaint, the report must be made to the town attorney. And then Ms. Thibodeau is asking, could we, in the second to the last paragraph, remove everything after, or remove but the town cannot compromise. And Mr. Lighty said that doesn't change the intent or the direction of the paragraph. It just changes the wording. Is council satisfied with removing that?
Yeah.
Just a minute on that. Removing that last line, sort of, in my opinion at any rate, does compromise the town's ability if the investigation is such that it's going to go outside of the lawyer or the town manager or the HR person. If this becomes a criminal matter, we have to do something about it. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's what that sort of
So to the
points at.
extent possible, period. So it's just, it wasn't possible because we had to go to the district attorney.
That's correct. The language there, the operative language is to the extent possible, and that's important because as these policies have evolved over time, many employers used to have policies that said every complaint will be treated as confidential. Well, it's hard to treat it as confidential if you've got to go to the alleged perpetrator and get their side of it. And so, or if you have to then consult with former employees. I mean, there's just all sorts of things that may happen that the complainant may think is a violation of some confidentiality promise. So that's why this kind of qualifier that's left in here is there. That's the reason for that, and I think that's a good thing to have. I think it's important to have that. And another one is, you may end up having an investigation that you end up having to suspend for various other reasons. But I also think that the last phrase there, it just states that the town must investigate. Well, that's what the policy says. It says in other places you must investigate. I just think that's a statement of intent without it being a statement of a procedure or protocol. It doesn't impose any requirement. That's why I don't like that. And the other thing I don't like is it says the town cannot compromise its obligation to investigate. Well, what if criminal charges are brought arising out of the same conduct and law enforcement says we want you to stop your investigation? I mean, you may decide to do that because of the direction you've been given and because there's an ongoing criminal investigation. I mean, I don't think you want to somehow tie your hands to forcing yourself to go forward contrary to the instructions you get from law enforcement officials. So I just think that Mayor Pro Tem pointed out, I think that is a problematic phrase for a variety of reasons.
If we said as versus but, would that also be problematic? Rather than but, you said as?
Well, I think
Would that also be problematic?
Well, I think what Rob was saying was he was worried that this would maybe somehow, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were worried that by taking that phrase out, that you're not showing the town's obligations to investigate.
Well, because there could be times when there will be parts of an investigation that will be out of the town's control.
Right.
And so you don't want to limit the town's ability to do that if necessary.
I think it's covered by the first sentence of the paragraph, though, that all claims of harassment will be thoroughly investigated, period. I mean, that is what you have to do. But I don't know that, and I also think that, again, I hadn't looked at it this way until you pointed it out, but I can see an employee who feels that they've been the victim of unlawful harassment reading this and thinking, what this tells me is you're going to keep it confidential, but maybe you won't. And because you're going to go forward with an investigation, and I don't know that I really want y'all to do that, the last thing you want is anything in your policy that discourages someone.
That's where I was coming from.
Bringing a complaint forward.
That was my point. Yeah.
And I'm afraid that, and again, I hadn't thought about it that way, but I'm concerned that language could have that effect.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, that's always the way it is. And
it is.
How many people have you talked to, Jeff, that they start a complaint and then they realize how much they've bitten off and they don't want to continue, they don't want to go forward, so it stops. That's completely up to the complainant.
Not necessarily, because if the complainant
in a criminal.
Yes, in criminal it is. It's really up to the complainant and to the DA. But in this context, it's not at all unusual to have somebody come forward, make a complaint, and then say, I've given you all this evidence and I've told you this terrible stuff, but you know what? I don't want you to do anything. And we're going to ordinarily say, if we believe that there's a basis for the complaint, whether they want you to investigate or not, you've got a duty to investigate, because you got to get to the bottom of it. Because otherwise, how are you going to take appropriate action to prevent a recurrence if you on the instruction of the complainant, decide not to do anything? I mean, I know a lot of people feel that way, but that's not proper protocol in this context. That if once you're on notice, through whatever means, you need to go forward with your investigation to the extent that you can, even if the complainant doesn't want you to do so. It's something to take into account, perhaps, with regard to how you weigh the evidence and your assessment of their credibility. But still, just because somebody changes their mind about going forward with a complaint should not deprive the town in any way of its obligation to do the investigation.
Right, I mean, essentially, you turn every employee into a mandated reporter.
Right.
And if the person that's been wronged, the person that's been harassed in whatever manner, doesn't want to pursue it, that has nothing to do with a complaint that was made by somebody else.
That's correct. Or your obligation, or the town's
Or the town's
obligation
to investigate that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You know, if you look at that sentence, we said will endeavor. So why don't could we eliminate the to the extent possible? Do you really need that? I mean, if you're endeavoring to keep it confidential, you need the to the extent possible. I mean, it's kind of the same thing said two different ways. And keeping it in, I mean.
I think it's just an emphasis.
It's really
word.
just a statement of fact, right?
I like endeavor. I think it gives us a little more flexibility. It's not a guarantee. I mean, we guarantee that we'll endeavor to do that, but we're not guaranteeing that, in fact, it will be confidential to the extent possible. I think that's the best you can really hope for, is that we'll do the best we can.
So do I understand now that that last sentence will read, the town will endeavor to keep complaints, investigations, and resolutions confidential, period?
I think, didn't you like it to stay in?
I'd like to keep it to the extent possible. I'd still leave that part in.
So to the extent possible, period.
Yeah, that's
right. Right.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
So everything beyond that is eliminated.
Yes, sir. All right. Is there anything else in this section 6?
I have one thing. It just comes to mind, it may not even be properly placed in this policy, but what if the harassment is counsel to staff? And we know what happens all over the beach, where there's council members that micromanage and harass and threaten people's employment. Does something like that land in a document like this, or is that like an ethics document that needs to get created, aside from this?
My position is that the policy does not preclude a complaint against a council member.
Okay.
And in fact, I've seen that, not here, I've seen that in other contexts where someone has invoked this policy to make a complaint against one of the members of the governing board. And it does fall within the policy. Now, obviously, it's a little different when you have somebody at that level because they can't be terminated. But what if you do have such a situation? I think again, it behooves the council to take whatever appropriate actions it can to prevent that conduct from recurring. And again, it's going to depend on the circumstances, but I do think that falls within the scope of this.
Great.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Well, in that case, does the council then take the action? Similar like a censure or something like that? Or?
Censure. In the case that comes to mind immediately, the investigation did not corroborate the complaints, but had they done so, I mean, again, and I was informed of this by the manager who reports to the council, and so they had, they were in an uncomfortable position, but our position was, we've got to do an investigation into this or engage someone to do so that we can advise the council about that, and that's exactly what we did. And again, in that particular case, had there been evidence of it, I think, first of all, to the extent that that employee had suffered any financial loss, which was one of the allegations, I think the municipality would have been in a position of having to rectify that. To prevent a recurrence, I think there, some action would have had to been taken, whether it was a censure, whether it was alerting law enforcement, whatever it might have been, something would have needed to have been done to prevent that council member from engaging in further conduct of that nature if it had occurred.
You okay?
And then the last holdover from the discussion previously was in regard to Article 10, which is the grievance procedure. You have copies of both what's been approved, which is what was recommended by MAPS and the league, and then the alternate version is highlighted at the top of that. That is from our previous personnel policy. That the most significant difference between the two is the alternate version, which is the one we had in the past, had an option for a grievance panel made up of citizens to hear a grievance. Whereas the approved version, there is still opportunity for outside interaction through a mediator. So that somebody from the professional from the outside, whether it's an HR professional, an attorney, or what have you, would hear the complaint at the request of the employee and then offer advice to management. So the reason I asked Mr. Lighty to be here is to discuss, if you want to discuss that with him. He was the author, right, of the previous policy. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Let me jump in here, because the history on this part of the discussion is that when I was reviewing the policy revisions, I recommended to the manager that the existing grievance procedure remain intact in y'all's policy, because for a couple of reasons. One was y'all had specially devised a procedure that was, unique to deal with these kinds of situations, and there was a history of y'all having made specific action to do that, as opposed to just being provided with a package of policies that you adopt without really, having personally invested in those policies. Because of that background, I recommended that it remain intact, on the assumption that you want to keep that in there. I don't have strong feelings about doing so, but I do think it's important that you just consider the history that you have about having developed that. You're not the only municipality that has that, but it is not the standard. Not many do. But it does provide a more formalized and elaborate, and in some cases cumbersome, and time-consuming mechanism for dealing with these things. And it's a mixed bag. But again, my thought was, well, not to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater until you've had a chance to really think about it. And I understand that y'all opted to go with what had been recommended by MAPS, and that's fine. I mean, and that's probably more standardized, but I think you just need to, I wanted you to be aware that in doing so, you take out some of those other safeguards or processes that you have in your traditional policy. You've had it for 6 years or whatever it is, in favor of one where there's going to be a more individualized, limited way of addressing grievances, but that's okay. So I just wanted to, and I'll be glad to discuss it in further detail, but I just wanted to give you my background on why I had suggested that remain in the policy, but I have no qualms with y'all not doing so if that's the decision of the council.
Yeah, a couple comments here. I think if we think about history, and I know Monica and I were deeply involved in this when we implemented it, and we actually got, I believe, recommendation. I know you were involved, John, but we also got recommendations, I think, from the league to put it in. Since that time, the league has reversed its position with respect to grievance panels. And between that time and today, we've never used the grievance panel. And another comment is, I think, keeping it internal to the town, our attorneys, and, other legal negotiators and whoever is far better than bringing it out into the public domain. I like kind of what we did with the MAPS procedure, and it's straightforward. And I would like to see us eliminate the grievance panel. That would be my personal opinion. But I think at the time we did put it in, and I think NAGS maybe had one at that time.
They did.
Yeah. But
And
I think
they'd
the
had
league.
one for a while. They'd had one going back to sometime in the 90s.
Yeah. But I remember the league was also a strong proponent at that time, but they've since changed, their recommendation. So I would like to see us go with the MAPS procedure. My feelings on it.
I concur with your comments, Mayor, because I do believe that the grievance procedure that we developed was in really good faith, and we thought it was going to help enable employees to feel comfortable with that there was a procedure. But over time, I don't know that there was any education about it. It sort of went by the wayside. As the Mayor pointed out, we've never used it. And so having something that's more standardized and common, if you will, in the workplace, and this is how I would classify this, to be a little more standardized, if I'm understanding, this is sort of perhaps even boilerplate for other municipalities. It's just a little more general, a little more easy to digest. And reviewing our former grievance policy, I don't see as many time limits as I do on this on the approved version that we had placed on ourselves on the prior the previous grievance procedure. It seemed like there were some time limits on that if you didn't speak up by a certain time, you were out of luck and that kind of thing. So looking over it, I would, and for those reasons and your reasons, I would concur that having both to look side by side and hearing what because that did alarm me a little bit when you had in your written comments that you really would prefer us to stay with it. I'm really glad to hear why. And it was because we took specific action and we spent time on it, and it seemed like the right approach at the time, but things have evolved on several fronts. So I would be in favor of keeping this one.
I'm in favor of keeping the MAPS solution to this. I think asking members of the community to get involved at this level I just think that that's something in a small town would compromise community, really, compromise people's ability, maybe with their neighbors, with their working relationship with the town government. I think it'd be difficult to maintain confidentiality. I think it's just really not a situation that anybody in this community would ever want to be put in. And I would rather see it stay with an objective, skilled, trained person. So I can't support the grievance panel. So I'm going to go with what MAPS has suggested.
I feel the same way. The grievance panel would be spreading it around the community too much.
I agree, but mainly because the grievance panel was of no use to us in the past when we needed it to be. And that was because of, as you said, there wasn't an education about it. There wasn't anything that was done properly. And so we don't need them.
So basically, we've already adopted the grievance procedure by MAPS, so that's really not an action item, correct?
Correct.
So what we'll need is a motion to amend, and I didn't put these on, so the personnel policy changes, which is the first one. So it's Article 3, Section 18, Article 7, Section 6, and Article 7, Section 17 of the personnel policies as discussed. and then included in the motion to amend Article 5, Section 6, as discussed by council, and that's the harassment.
I have a alternative suggestion. Cool. That might be easier.
Easier is better.
If the consensus of the board is to proceed with what the manager has just outlined, I recommend that the manager draft a resolution specifying those provisions that would be revised, and then presenting that to the council for action at the next meeting. That way, the amendments will occur by resolution, which is the way you want to adopt your policy in the first place, and you'll have a document which makes it really clear what the board's action was with regard to those changes. It's also easier than trying to specify the motion.
That's not easier. We have to create another document, another
After
agenda
he
item.
showed off all the articles and the sections and everything.
Just so I'm clear on that, so when we adopt a policy, it's best to do it by resolution as opposed to a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, doing it by motion is okay, as long as you specify that you're doing it, that the motion is to adopt this as a resolution, as distinct from an ordinance. And again, with regard to police power ordinances and other ordinances that don't require a public hearing, the council can adopt those, at any time. The main thing is that with regard to your personnel policy, you always want to have adopted it in the form of a resolution, so there's no question that it's not an ordinance. Because it's not, if it's an ordinance, then there are penalties for any deviation in not following it. And so if it's adopted as a policy, it gives the council, it gives the town greater flexibility about the implementation of that policy. So the resolution versus ordinance, that's the main thing. And that's why when it's adopted, I think, in fact, I think you have one for when the policy was adopted previously, you had a resolution document. And I'm recommending you just have the same kind of thing that's limited to just these changes.
Oh, okay.
So do we need a motion to direct the town manager to basically prepare that?
Sure. You want?
Or do we do it by consensus?
I'll make a motion, we direct the town manager to prepare the resolution for our, regarding our personnel policy and with these particular changes that we've discussed.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? I have just one comment or question. We really have no risk, I don't think, for the next 30 days, in that we probably won't get to that resolution until the August meeting. I wouldn't see any of this that would create any issue for the...
No, and should we get a harassment complaint within before the next meeting, we'll handle it in accordance with the way that the council's wording is.
Yeah.
Until we get the wording officially changed in the document.
Well, the major change was the time frame, really, so other than eliminating a sentence or two and...
Right, the time, so adding the sentence, that was just to make clarity. The pay or the length of service bands was clear enough for interpretation from the HR officer. This just makes it more clear. So it says the exact same thing, just using different words. So we're good.
Any other questions or comments or discussion on the motion on the floor? There be none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
Item number 6, new business. Discussion consideration of resolution 21-06, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Duck, North Carolina, appointing the Director of Community Development as zoning administrator and subdivision administrator for the Town of Duck. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the Director of Community Development, Joe Hurd.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Kingston, members of council. This is one of those items when we adopted the North Carolina General Statute, Chapter 160D, a couple of months ago. All of those amendments I'd mentioned, and it was outlined in the staff report that there were a number of other action items that would result from adopting those things we needed to do. There are things that we've done, spent a lot of time on administratively, in terms of revising some policies, revising all of our application forms, developing a statement that you will see in some of your future ordinances and things like that related to consistency with land use plan. So there's a number of items that we're able to do administratively. This is one item that it's tied to, it required this action as it related to a subdivision administrator, appointing, just having a person, and in talking with Town Attorney Robert Hobbs, just thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and do it for the zone, to include zoning administrator and subdivision administrator. All this is doing is saying, here's where the buck stops. This isn't, this doesn't give me any more authority than I already have. It's just saying that for these types of decisions, they are the responsibility. If you adopt this, you'd be saying they are the responsibility of the Director of Community Development or his or her designee. And that's all that's being accomplished here, is that you are formally appointing someone in that position to fulfill those duties. So as we move forward, if there is an appeal of a decision, it's very clear who the party is on the town's part, or conceivably, even if there's other kind of legal action, you have set that person as being the one who's responsible for that decision. So that's what we're trying to accomplish, and it was just a follow-up to that Chapter 160D.
The gift that keeps on giving. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 21-06, appointing the Director of Community Development as zoning administrator and subdivision administrator for the town of Duck.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Joe. Item number 6B, discussion consideration of a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Duck, North Carolina, approving financing terms to reset the interest rate for the current Town Hall loan. Town Manager, Drew Havens.
So I spoke with you at your mid-month meeting, asking you if you wanted to save a little bit of money. You said yes, this is the resolution to do that. So this is with BB&T. Just the backstory is I contacted them and asked them if they would like to lower our interest rate for the remaining life of the loan. They agreed to do that. We're currently at 3.21. This will go to 1.25. It should save us in just under $50,000, somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 in interest for the remaining life of the loan. So this resolution puts that in motion. The cost of it is there's about $3,000 worth of legal and documentation fees that we'll pay to BB&T to prepare all the documents and get it back to y'all.
Great. Let's do it.
Any questions for Drew?
Thank you.
We need a motion. We need a motion.
Yes, please. So the motion is to adopt the resolution approving financing terms.
I'll make a motion that we have the town manager approve refinancing of the administration building of the town of Duck.
And approve the motion, or approve the resolution, I'm sorry.
And approve the resolution.
And the resolution has no number, correct?
Correct.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Drew.
Sir.
Go on item number C, discussion consideration resolution 21-07, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Duck, North Carolina, accepting American Rescue Plan Act funds and direct the town manager to take all actions necessary to receive such funds. Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this, as I mentioned in the summary here, I was on probably my 5th or 6th webinar about the ARP funds, and one of the folks in the School of Government, I'd heard people talking about resolutions before. She was very clear that their interpretation of general statutes was that the council must adopt a resolution, not should, but they must. So this resolution will just allow, or just basically say, yes, we will accept the ARP funds and direct me to take the action necessary to make that happen. the timing of ARPs changed a little bit. It seems to change every time I'm on a webinar. Maybe I'll stop going on webinars. Maybe then we'll get the money a little quicker. It was supposed to be, we were supposed to get the first half sometime last month. That didn't happen. The first half should be coming out now. They're saying sometime this month. Our total looks to be about 126. So we'll get 63,000 sometime, hopefully this month. And then the way the law is written, the second half will come exactly 1 year later. So we'll cross over 2 fiscal years. We do have a fund set up within our accounting system to receive these funds when they come. There's no requirement that we establish a separate bank account or anything like that. It's just we need to be able to detail the revenue from the funds. We'll be able to allocate interest to it. This interest rate environment, that's not a whole lot. And then all the expenditures will need to code appropriately in our accounting system, because we'll need to make a report annually starting this October to the federal government about the funds. Even if we haven't spent any, we just need to submit a report to them until this closes out. We have 4 years, I think it is, 3 or 4 years to spend the money. So I am still, I wish I could tell you I have complete clarity on what we can spend money on. I know what we can't, but we're still trying to figure out what we can, mainly because we are a town without a utility, and that's what seems to be a lot of the cities are defaulting to putting this into utility funds for infrastructure. We don't have water or sewer infrastructure. Other places are using it to to make up for lost revenue because of COVID. We have not seen lost revenue because of COVID. So I'm talking with other managers that are in somewhat similar situations, and we're trying to put our heads together. So we'll be coming to you all with some ideas, but once I have more clarity, I'll also send something out to you all saying, here's kind of a menu of things in the general kind of things we can spend money on, and ask for some direction from y'all. But this just legally allows us to stay in compliance with state statutes and receive the money, assuming you want to receive the money.
Just a comment on that. This is one of the places where our population, played against us, because the award is based upon their population. So a lot of our neighboring towns here are getting quite a bit more based upon their populations.
Interesting. And did I hear you say 63,000 twice, so about 126?
126, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I wasn't sure what it was based on, or I'm sure you've told us before, but that's interesting.
Based upon population.
Well, I'll make a resolution, or I'd like to make a resolution, or I'd like to adopt Resolution 21-07, accepting the American Rescue Plan Act funds with these stipulations.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Just once again, Drew, I don't need to do anything with that document I got, because you've already...
Correct.
All right. Don't want to go to jail or anything. Item number 7, items 2, and presentations from our town attorney. John?
Mr. Mayor, I have already covered those items that have been referred to me.
Thank you, sir. Item number 8, items referred to in presentations from the town manager. Drew?
We'll start with departmental updates, and just for the sake of being easy, we'll start with the one closest to me. Joe?
He was thinking that was me.
No, you already did yours.
That's right.
So how about we just, go down the line, and then Christian, and then I'll back clean up.
All right. Well, as we typically do, just start out with a brief overview of our permit activity. We are seeing a few changes here. Highlight a few of the key points. If you look at that top row, if you look at that right side, you can see that overall we're still up over where we were last year, which was a very, very busy year for us as it was. But things have begun to slow down as we've drifted into the summer months, which is typical for us. But even if we compare it to last year, what you can see there, down at the bottom toward the center there, we were down 22% over where we were last year for that. So that's a significant drop in terms of on a month-to-month comparison. And you can see where that all came from. Even though we were higher in certain types of permits, there was significantly fewer trade permits, plumbing, electrician, heating and air, those types of things. So that's where that deficiency occurred in those types of permits. I did also highlight, though, one trend that is interesting to see where this heads over the coming months. All the way on the right side, you can see highlighted a 31% increase in the land disturbance permits. So that is owners, developers preparing their property for development. So what that tells us is, though, that even though we may have had a drop off there, we can still expect to see some good numbers coming up with that increase in mind. Looking at clusters on the northern stretch of the town, did have a nice little area of activity there in Soundsea Village. See a lot of little pins in that area. Moving to the southern part of town, you see an awful lot of activity, but well spread out among the different neighborhoods. There's no particular one to call out, but that's a lot of pins for a month in June. So just to highlight, we did have 4 new construction permits, so those are still moving forward, and we anticipate that to continue through this calendar year at least. What we see there are a couple houses on West Seahawk. One of those is a very modest size house at 125 West Seahawk. Only a 3-bedroom house there. Very difficult, a challenging lot topographically. That they've just started work on that property there. The others are much more typical of the kind of things we see with the 5- and 6-bedroom residences at Duck Ridge Village Court and Cherokee Court. Nothing else particular to highlight in the permit part of the presentation. And then just looking at some of the more sort of projects and things going on. So just a couple things to bring you up to date. Dune planting, Sandy Cross has sent out all the information to the hundreds of property owners along the ocean front, and every 5 years we have to get those dune authorizations, and so she is getting those in very, very steady fashion. So she just asked me to report that we're well on our way to receiving all those. So making really good progress over the last few weeks. In a related item, in our contracted dune planting, we had the beach grass that occurs mostly over the late winter months. This time of year, in the heat, is when we see the sea oats and the panic grass, other things that are planted on our dunes to help stabilize those. So that will begin, as you may see Emerald Forest, our contractor out there, possibly as soon as the end of this week, with the storm that may throw a little kink into that, but if not, it'll begin early next week. So you will see them out there doing what they do, installing those plantings. Just one quick update. Wish we had something a little more final at this point, but regarding our BRIC Coastal Resiliency Grant from FEMA, We were informed that we had made the final cut. We weren't aware there were going to be additional cuts, additional steps, but thankfully we're on the right side of the cut at least. Out of 33 projects from North Carolina, we are only one of 6 that is moving forward into that final decision making. We were not given, I did ask, and they won't give us, can't give us a date at this point as to when that final decision will be made. But again, it's only good news, I guess, that we've cleared another little hurdle at least, and hopefully we'll receive some really good news on that shortly. And then finally, just wanted to give you, just focus a little bit on our bicycle pedestrian counter. We haven't done this in a while, so just want to give you an update. Pardon me. You can see on the map, maybe not quite as clear up there, but you know, we have our counter for those who know where it is, just kind of north of the intersection at Four Seasons along the Duck Trail. It is still the multi-use path at that point where you have bikes and pedestrians. You can see the area being used there, and what I'd like to focus on is that photograph on the right that shows the area we're talking about, where it just kind of dips down into the depression there off the east side of Highway 12. And here's a close-up of the equipment that we have there, the instruments. So the first thing is embedded in the asphalt there. We have, you can see those diamond shapes that are cut in and tarred over. Those are sensors that are similar to the sensors you would see at a traffic light, the things that trip the light from turning from red to green, that kind of thing. They're similar to that, and those are the sensors that pick up the bicycle traffic. It is not 100% perfect, because if your bike hits right in the middle of those 2 diamonds, it's possible it won't catch you because it's so narrow in that area, but catches nearly everything. You know, we have field tested this for a few years, but that's the purpose of that, embedded in there. And then you see the other part of that is that wooden pole there. If you look really closely, you can see 2 little dots. Those are camera lenses that are mounted within that pole. So the pole is basically keeping it at a good level. We're able to hit pedestrians who are walking by. And the sensor that's mounted in there within that camera lens will click off. It's very similar in a way. It's just a form of motion detector. Again, catches most everything. They fine-tune these products, but occasionally you may have someone, if someone's walking side by side, it may, depending on how in tune they are with each other, it may only read that as one person. But that's what that is doing there. So that's picking up the pedestrians. So just have a few little things here to bring you up to date. So this is from the beginning of the calendar year in January. So you can see these figures. The blue is both. The black, in this case, are pedestrians, and the green is would be the bicycles. So you can see, you know, pretty flat through the winter months there. You know, not a whole lot of activity, not a lot of people out using that area of town coming into the village. You know, not a whole lot to do at that point of the year. But then you see it begins to pick up in April, and you can see how it's just exploded up through those months toward the end of May, June, and July. The peak days we had, that very top one up there, over 2,700 counts over a couple days in late June, June 23rd and 24th. You can see we almost hit that peak again over the July 4th weekend with a bunch of people there. So that's what we're seeing down there. So again, the way to think about this is these are people who are coming and going to the village from the south only. So this is not picking up the person who has parked their car at Scarborough Lane, for example, and then is walking, in addition to shopping there, walking to other businesses and using that system. It is not picking up anybody who's coming from our northern neighborhoods. And that's something we may want to talk a little about in the future, if that is something that the council wants to see. We would have to, we were able to get this system installed for free with a partnership through the state, North Carolina State University and ITRI. And we could do something similar to the north, but that expense would probably be borne entirely by the town at this point. So we can talk about that a little more. That might be a good retreat topic to consider.
Joe, how do you get the data? Is it transmitted from there to your laptops, or?
I have, I can go in and enter. It's all electronic, so it's sent directly. You know, we had to do some things up front, but it's all sent directly to a, we have a Eco Counter is the name of the company. And I've got a website I can go to, enter my password and all that for Duck. If we have more than one counter, I would have to select which one. But it gives me a whole slate of information, including a couple other things here that
Yeah, does it give you time of day? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we have a couple other things. There's actually even more than what I'll show you tonight, but so this is one of the aspects that they show there. Again, this one, blue is pedestrian, black is bicycles. You can see there, maybe a little hard to read at the bottom, but you can see again a flat line until about just, beginning just before 6 a.m. And you can see that peak rise up. You can see the peak, pedestrian peak is at 9 a.m. and then kind of tapers down. You can see the bicycle peak is a little bit later in the morning, 10 and 11 o'clock. You see that peak, and you can see there are actually good chunk of the day there, really going all the way until about, what is that, about 9 o'clock at night, that carries over. We still have a fairly active set of pedestrians and bike riders who are using it to that point before it then tapers down, to midnight, where it flat lines again at that point. One of the interesting things is you can see there's a point there where the bicycle traffic actually exceeds the pedestrian traffic, which is an interesting fact there. One other thing, this one is for the bicycles only. So this is hourly by the day of the week. So on this map, and again, it's hard to see the little key in the upper corner there. The blue line is Mondays. Black line is Tuesdays. And we have this map. These are for the bikes. These are for the pedestrians. There are a lot of similarities there. Pedestrians are a little more extreme there as far as the highest. But for the bikes, Mondays are the highest. You have another good day on Tuesday. And then Fridays were clearly the lowest day. What that tells us is likely what we're seeing there is that people want to get out and about in that early part of the week to explore the community. So they're out there poking around in a little more fun, not driving in their car necessarily, but exploring the shops, seeing what there is to do in and around town. And same thing again, just a little more extreme on the Mondays with the pedestrians there. And the rest of the days are all kind of lumped together for pedestrians. But again, very clear difference on Mondays, again, as people are out and about. So if you'll recall, last year when we were able to do our ambassador program, whether we knew it or not at the time, that was actually a very effective day to choose to have those people out there educating the weekly visitors each Monday. So just want to share a few of those things with you and update you on that counter. And that's all I had for you this evening.
Joe, I have just a thought about the counter. When I know that the town, the events on the green have started up, but when the concerts start back, I would really like to see if there's an uptick at, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock walking into town, because one, I think it'd be interesting to see how many people walk in for the concerts or things in the afternoon. It doesn't surprise me to see these numbers in the morning, because quite frankly, it's just too stinking hot, right? So of course the numbers are high in the morning, but I'll be really curious to see if we see variations when the town events start back up.
Yeah, because I suspect it might end up looking a little more like this. And what you can see here are the peaks and the valleys. Those valleys are days that it's pouring rain. Nobody wants to be outside and, and be walking around or biking in those situations. So, yeah, but you're right. With that change, that will be interesting to look at. And we'll be glad to do that.
Thanks.
This is really great data.
It is.
Not to get ahead of ourselves, but price range for that kind of thing that we got for free?
I'd have to pull those up. There was a time I probably could have answered that right off the top of my head, but there was a number of years ago that we got it. So, I'll be glad to put those together for you to consider that. Because there might be opportunities, again, certainly on the northern side where we could get the same kind of information about people coming in, but there may be some value if there's a key point within the village itself to gauge the amount of activity, to quantify that. And that may be something else to consider at some point in time.
Joe, before you leave, just one question on the brick project.
Yes, sir.
What's the timeline from a standpoint if we don't hear, they automatically will have to delay till next year? I mean, because of, obviously if we don't hear, once we hear, then we've got the bid process and all that. So what do you estimate, September, October? If we haven't heard, it's a delay?
There are going to be some we would certainly, I would expect we would need to get it started probably by the end of this calendar year in order to accomplish that project prior to the season really hitting full force, as far as the number of people, because for that project, there are going to be times when we have lane closure on Duck Road, where one lane will be closed to accommodate the work that needs to be done there. And more than just the temporary time frame, the very narrow temporary time frames that we saw with the sidewalk. They would probably be for longer periods of time when that has to occur, and we'll have to have traffic direction. So it's more important with this project that we do that. So there definitely are still some things that need to fall into place with the funding, VHB's completion of design, permitting. All of there's a couple of, permitting part is out of our hands, but we're trying to do our best to, be sure that when we get them will be something that the agencies can expedite and work with quickly. So there's a few things in there that, we're definitely trying to keep on top of moving forward, but that would be our sort of construction time frame. If we can't get somebody in at that point, I think we'd really be pushing it. But we can talk about that a little more as we go. We'll keep you updated, as well as the other property owners and stakeholders in that project area.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm welcome to glad to be here to report out on July. A couple comments to what Joe was just talking about. It'd be great to get a timer or a counter at the fire department, the public safety building at some point, because the amount of traffic we see that goes by there with bikes and pedestrians, it would be interesting to catch that end. But then we also know we have the bulk of our properties in the center of town too. So hopefully we can talk about that maybe as a public safety piece too, just to know the amount of pedestrian vehicular traffic and the bike traffic, just curiosity. I'm a data dork, so I like that stuff. On to fire. So I will report out here on our to-date incidents. We'd had 226. We've kind of calmed down from what we saw in May. May was a huge spike, which we'll see here in a minute. We're in June now, 71, but last month we had 57, and it was higher than expected for May. So I didn't know how high we would go comparing June to last year and previous years, but we've kind of leveled out a little bit. So May seemed to be an anomaly, but we'll see as we keep going. The breakdown specifically, the change we see really from last year is more rescue calls, which that's pretty typical with the population. There's so many people here right now, we tend to see more of those. Alarm activations are up, and that's mostly cooking related, and then some just maintenance with systems related. And then I'm looking down to see if anything else really sticks out. Good news is the fire line is low, so we like to see that. And then when you put it in pie chart form, you can see again most of our calls were medical, and then a smattering of everything else. As it is summer, we're continuing the Saturday and Sunday standbys by EMS, by their availability. They made most Saturdays and Sundays. There was a couple Sundays they were not able to get someone at this end, but they're really good. Matter of fact, one day we had a call up here. They had to leave, and they were still able to bring another ambulance up. So they're doing a really good job to try to keep someone in town for the weekend. I'm going to talk a little bit about cross-training with the lifeguards. I think we had 380 total calls for us for training this year, but or for this month. Every June, we do a cross-training with surf rescue, and they are young, and some of them are not large. They're all tiny, fit people, and they do amazing stuff in the water. So this is just a few pictures from our training that night. What we do with fire is we're going to assist as much as we can on shore. If you see the picture on the left, we may get wet up through helping with a line pull and getting patients onto shore, but we let them get in the surf and do their thing, and they're really quite impressive. If you get the chance to ever see that or to see them make a rescue, these are just a couple pictures. So we train on getting the patients out and then getting them packaged to get them off the beach. And we do that every June, and then we have a cookout, so we did hot dogs so we could put faces to folks, because usually on the beach it's like you don't remember the 60 he's got on staff, so it's like, hey, you. So at least we try to get some face recognition with everyone. So July 4th was this past weekend, and I think the point, I'm sure Chief Ackerman will touch on this too, for us July 4th isn't just the one day. People come down before and come down after and tend to spread out their need to let fireworks off. I think the town, we do the fire department, and I thought Dare County did a great job this year of messaging the dangers of fireworks. They put it out, I know, with the county, and they put out where there was fireworks, but we're still going to have some. That's just the reality of where we live. We did a firefighter standby on July 4th, and I'm happy to come in front of you today and say we had no pyrotechnics-related fires or injuries over the course of that weekend. So, yeah. As I'm continuing on with my highlighting volunteer firefighters, 39 years are going into our 40th year. As we go into our 40th year next year, I'll bring other things forward just so that everyone understands the history of duck fire. But tonight I will highlight two folks, and a lot of you know Kent Zimmerman. Kent's been with us 11 and a half years, one of our key driver operators, and also now serves as the treasurer of the board, so there's a couple pictures. But the whole reason Kent's even a member of Duck Fire is because of his wife, Sarah, actually. When they moved down here, Sarah was the one that really said, hey, we should get involved. And I love this picture, and it's a terrible picture on the top, but it's an important picture because Sarah, like Nancy, like Pat Scarlett, they started as support role positions that turned into support firefighter positions where they actually were helping. And this is actually, the fire on the top was a few years ago. It was actually a Southern Shores fire, but we got there first just because it was at the north end. And we had to get something on this fire right away. And there you have a volunteer firefighter, and that's Sarah also on the Blitz fire. So that's an example of how we took support firefighters and used them to at least put something at bay until we could get suppression firefighters in play. So thank you to both of them. They've put time in, a lot of time in when you look at hours. And actually, I wish I'd done that, is gone back and given everyone's hours to date. And so it gives me something to do next month. And then I just want to talk a little bit about the budget. I want to thank you. I want to thank you not only for the positions, but also being able to up us just a little to meet our operational demands. It really will make a difference, so I appreciate your support that way. To that, we do have the firefighter EMT process going on. Our application period is open until July 21st. We plan on looking through the applications and then plan on the physical agility assessment early August. It'll be the first week of August. Actually, I hope we have it done before council. Then we'll set up interviews. It'll be panel interview and chief's interview like we did before, with an anticipated start date late in August. And once we get through this process and we can find those 2 more people, I can tell you right now, this is always what will be at the station 24/7. We will have 3 people on duty, and that makes a big difference for us getting out. We're getting out with 3, no matter what, that are capable to do whatever the call may require. So to that, Joe is really helpful, and I think this is an important piece to remember, because what I'm looking for is not just, we've got the medical, we can do the car accidents, we can do the public service calls, all that, but at the end of the day, we are here for fire protection. So it's important to know we have about 2,930 housing units. That includes houses and condos and townhouses. We have approximately 75 commercial structures. We have other structures, public utilities, common areas, garages, sheds, and the value from August, I think Joe gave me these numbers from 2020 is $1,835,000. You can do the math. I'm going to go like this. $1.8 billion in property. So thank you for allowing us to get that one engine out 24/7, and hopefully we can mitigate that anything that might come our way. And with that, I'll take any questions. This is one of the pictures from our training with surf rescue.
Nice.
One last thing too, Mayor, we are monitoring the weather, obviously, for tomorrow. We'll have a crew on and we'll take it as it comes.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Donna. Chief?
Okay. Thank you all. Glad we can all be together and have a big audience. Let's see. I want to talk about what's on everyone's mind. I know your phones have probably been ringing off the hook. Social media's coming apart. I know mine has, and I've had a lot of angry friends and a lot of folks contacting me about traffic. So I'm going to do my best as a layperson to talk about where I think the issues are and kind of explain what we probably all already know and an approach to this. So my observations come from watching this traffic for nearly 19 years now and seeing, as most of you have, what has changed. The biggest thing I'll point out that when Duck Road was built, it stopped at Sunset Grill. There was no northern Currituck Outer Banks. There was no North Duck at that point. And in that time, we've experienced just explosive growth, especially on the Currituck Outer Banks, with one road, one 2-lane minor highway to feed all of that infrastructure and all those housing units. So traffic backups, as we know, they're a result of chain events. And the chain reaction that we're seeing out there, first and foremost, is an absolute unprecedented volume of cars on that road. For the first time in 19 years, Duck has a rush hour, a defined rush hour, morning and evening. On average, it's taking me, I leave at 5 o'clock, it's taking me 50 minutes to an hour to get to Nags Head. It's barely moving, and the reasons why, or at least what I sit there and try to observe, pedestrians crossing the road are an issue. Left-turning vehicles present a huge challenge, and I separate left and right because left-turning vehicles need to cross the opposite direction traffic, which often causes issues. Right-turning vehicles, the drivers get frustrated. They try to get out of those side streets and can't. That frustration leads to some aggressive driving and issues with that. Low-speed vehicles, again, unprecedented number on our highways, and it's something I've mentioned it to Drew, and it's something I'd love for council to be able to take up and readdress in the future, some ideas and thoughts I have on that. Dramatic increase in peak traffic. As I said, we have a rush hour now, and then inclement weather days, cloudy days, folks can't go to the beach. They want to go somewhere. Ponding stormwater has always been an issue that's plagued Duck, but it's one area where we've made some real headway. We've done a lot of great things over the last 20 years to deal with that, and I'd say now that that's probably one of our minor issues, when at one time that was our #1 issue, especially there at Tuckahoe. Traffic crashes also. We have a traffic crash, it can close both lanes of traffic. We have to close for officer safety, for firefighter safety, and that can really, the ripple effect of each of these things can just back traffic up to enormous amounts. So the only way we're going to do it is to break the chain. And we get a lot of great ideas from folks, and I'll talk about them. And I'm somebody who supports every idea and thinks that every idea should be looked at, but we have to look at solving all of the problem. We can't solve one piece of it and think that suddenly it's going to solve our traffic issues. So we've got to accept that we've got to address those causes. We've got to ensure the safety of our motorists and our pedestrians. We've got to adhere to state law, and these ideas have to be realistic. So some of the things we keep hearing, and I get folks telling me, is just remove all the crosswalks. That will fix everything in Duck. As I want to point out, we also get a lot of folks that say we need to be out there ticketing for jaywalking. And there is no jaywalking in the town of Duck by North Carolina state law. So the only time you can write a jaywalking ticket is at a traffic-controlled intersection, which we don't have a single traffic-controlled intersection. So folks can cross Duck Road at marked crosswalks or any other point. So we've done some really good things to try and funnel people to those crosswalks. And the pedestrian project that we've done and the plantings and the landscapings, while some see that as just look good stuff, it actually works. It actually funnels people towards those crosswalks. I have a lot of issues also with motorist and pedestrian perception about how crosswalks work. There's a lot of motorists that believe you have to stop at every crosswalk for somebody waiting. We have pedestrians that believe the same thing, but in reality, our laws say that you have to stop for somebody who is in the crosswalk actively crossing. But people want to be nice, people want to be courteous, but again, it's a chain reaction. One person stops to let somebody cross the road, it just backs up from there, and the more people that do it, the more problems we have. I've also been told just put an officer at every crosswalk in the town, control the flow of traffic. Well, it's a matter of mathematics for me. I've got 13 crosswalks, I've got 14 officers, I've got to cover the street and the other calls 24 hours a day. So it just simply can't be done. And again, I can't mandate folks to cross at particular points. So traffic lights in Duck has come up. I think it's not a terrible idea, but it could cause far more problems than we have. I look at the Sea Oats trail traffic lights. I was stopped there the other day, as most of you probably have been. As they're working on it, they cut the timers, so it's gone to its own timer cycle. And as I sat there at it, I wondered, why do we even have this light? I'm not really sure what the purpose is. So I'm not sure more traffic lights really solves anything. Banning left turns has come up. That's tough. We don't have places for folks to turn around. What we have was laid out long ago, and that's been an issue for us as a town on a number of different issues, and this is one of them. Probably the only thing that I think maybe really would work is to build a jug handle bridge around Duck for bypass traffic, but I can't even imagine what the cost of that would be, and we can't seem to get our other bridge built, so I'm not sure that's going to work. As we've studied this, we've really looked at it, and we relied on our numbers that we get through our LPRs. And again, I've told you in the past, there's some discrepancy in how those numbers report based on traffic, the volume of traffic and how heavy it is. But the one thing we found consistently as we looked is 60 to 70% of vehicles that enter Duck are continuing right through and going towards the northern Currituck Outer Banks. So the issue is, our reality is, Duck is a pass-through for traffic that is not stopping here. They're traveling out of town, and that's a lot of the reason we have these backups. We have the morning rush hour coming in, we have the afternoon rush hour coming out. I'm also hearing from a lot of folks, and maybe Monica, you're in the same thing, there's a ton of people up there in Corolla, but there's really limited resources because of staffing issues and things. And so a lot of those folks are coming south to try and find restaurants, try and find things to do, and it's just contributing to that traffic problem. So in the end, I think there's really only one long-term solution for us, and it's the one we've advocated for a long time, and that's to get the Mid-Currituck Bridge built. I remain optimistic. I joked early on in my time here in Duck that I'd be retired before we ever saw the bridge, and I kind of meant that facetiously, but now I begin to worry a bit. But I think that we have to take the pressure off of Duck Road, and the only way to do that is to have an alternative route for folks that want to go directly to Currituck. I don't think it would ultimately solve our traffic problem, but I think it would be a step in the right direction for us. Other than 4-laning all the way from Kitty Hawk through Southern Shores and Duck, which would absolutely destroy our community as well as the neighboring community. So I don't think that's on the table. So my intent tonight was not to be defeatist of ideas. It's to just point out that there's some obstacles that we have to overcome, and that we often hear simple solutions that when we begin to put them into play, they're not as simple as they may seem. I certainly remain open and willing to do anything possible to address the issue, but the only thing I can tell friends and community members that have called me is to just please be patient, try to time your travel as best you can through the times when it's not as busy, and I think patience for all of us through this summer is paramount. So as, I don't want it to seem like Chief Black and I talked about this fireworks thing before, because we really didn't, but I just want to talk about pyrotechnics, because I did get a couple comments about our response strategy to pyrotechnics calls. So we've always maintained our strategy has always had 3 tenets, and that's public education first, visibility in the neighborhoods during the 4th of July and surrounding days, and then prioritization of the most dangerous violations out there. There's only a finite number of us, and there's a lot of fireworks going off out there. So what are priority calls for us? Well, they're absolutely pyrotechnics that are being launched from wooden structures. We got a call from a resident in Carolina Dunes who saw somebody launching them off the 3rd floor deck of a house. That was absolutely a priority to get there. Pyrotechnics that are launched in a manner that might threaten homes or businesses. Believe it or not, I've had fireworks shot at me out here on our beaches in past years. So anything that would be trying to harm somebody would be a priority. This year we did have another call where somebody was getting ready to set off fireworks in their front yard in a home that was completely covered in beach grass, which is probably one of the most flammable things that we have. And anybody who's seen a brush fire is depicted here. They move extremely fast, and they will take down a house in moments. And then the other issue is we do have pyrotechnics that are launched recklessly or by highly intoxicated people, and that could always is a concern for us. I do have some positive news to talk about on the front of pyrotechnics calls. So this July 4th, we only saw 8 calls come in. 21 calls year to date dealing with pyrotechnics, and then we only had 3 additional calls that occurred this week surrounding July 4th. But as I looked at the data from 2010 on, we've seen a steady decline. With the exception of last year, it ticked back up, and I think that was just folks wanting to get out and do something in the midst of COVID there. But we have seen a steady decline in the reporting of pyrotechnic calls. So I think our messaging, our strategy has worked over the years. We can't get out there and get every single person to stop, but what we're doing is working. Some of the logistical considerations that I have to look at when scheduling folks and figuring out the best way to address this is, as Donna mentioned, fireworks are not a one-day event for us. So depending on the day of the week 4th of July falls, if it falls on a Friday, for example, we'll have a full 4th of July Friday, and then when the new folks show up on Saturday, they'll have another 4th of July on Saturday, and then the Sunday folks will have one on Sunday. So it becomes a 3-day event for us, and sometimes it spans the duration of the week. So we have to split up our resources to cover that as best we can. The other issue we deal with is most fireworks are set off in a 2-hour window. This year it was really from 9 to about 10:30, 11 o'clock. It was done. Didn't see a firework in the sky. So we try to run around like ping pong balls, going to every single call or every firework we see. It's difficult for us to get there, and I know it frustrates some complainants because we're dealing with somebody, we have to get over to them. By that time, that person's done shooting their fireworks, and now there's somebody a quarter mile down the beach doing it. So it's difficult to get to all of them, so we do the best we can. Oftentimes, we do get other calls for service during the midst of fireworks. And as I said, officer safety is always my primary concern. We used to go out on the beach, four-wheelers, patrol the beach, and we ceased that activity about 12, 13 years ago because we encountered a number of people who just became violent, firing fireworks at officers, and we just realized it was an unsafe situation to have just a few officers out there with large crowds at night. So we've ceased doing that, but we do patrol the streets heavily. We do have the ability to get on the beach if we need to respond to something. And we're also, as I said, we only got 8 calls this year, so limited citizen reporting has been an issue because those are our eyes and ears out there to rely on that. And then often the calls we get simply report there's fireworks going off on the beach at Carolina Dunes or Four Seasons. It's very vague, very hard for us to get out there and isolate where the problem might be. And then if we do stop to address a violator or somebody who needs to be ticketed, that's generally 45 minutes to an hour just to deal with that situation, properly seize the fireworks and provide receipts for that and issue summons. So as I said, for 1.5 to 2 hour window of fireworks, they're pretty much done, and we've tied an officer up doing that. So this year, as well as most, the officers did their best to go around, go to each fireworks scene, tell the people it's illegal, please stop, cease. Most people didn't realize that fireworks were illegal. Most of them are brought in from out of state where they can be legally purchased. So most folks were kind and did that. We had a few people say, just ticket me and I'll finish them. I kind of drew the comparison there. That's somebody who you stop for DWI who says, you're going to arrest me anyway, but I'd like to drive 5 miles home before I get there. So no, it's not something we do. So I hope that gives you just a little bit of glimpse into what we deal with when it comes to pyrotechnics. It is something we take seriously. It is something that the town really worked on hard from the inception to make it safer, and I think our declining call volume with respect to pyrotechnics shows that that's working. June, fairly typical summer month for us, as we've seen a ton of people out there, but for the most part, they're behaving themselves. We've had some vandalism over the last month that we've dealt with, most of it fairly minor, but still concerning. Number of incidents here in the town park and throughout town. So that is something we're trying to combat with as much visibility as we can, especially overnight. Looking at call volume, I presented a little different way. I wanted to give you a picture of a number of years rather than just focus on this year. So I've drawn our dates or our comparison back to 2018 to show you that for the most part, our year-to-date call volume has remained fairly consistent over those years, and then June rather, year over year has remained very consistent. So on par with that. LPR reads are up. It's posted on the website. We're doing that as we talked about. Joe talked about the pedestrian and bicycle counters. Again, it's not forgotten that we want to get back to getting counters out on the road for vehicles, but with all that's going on, it's going to be a fall project. So not going to stop working on that. And then last, we've done a great job getting our recruiting message out. I'm very fortunate because I have the 11 best recruiters that anybody could ever have. No ad, no video, no anything else that I could conceive would be as effective as 11 happy officers going out there and talking to other officers about why they need to come to Duck. So some of the talking points that we've really hit home on and our message to our applicants is, while others are defunding, we're expanding our police department. We value job knowledge and also life experiences. All of our officers have come from another department, so they bring with them good and bad experiences from those departments, and that helps build who we are and what we do here. We never rely on, I never want to hear the words, we're doing it that way because we've always done it. We're always open to improvement and figuring out new and better ways to do things. So those folks coming in are great for that. We have a positive and inclusive team-centered work environment. It's really great to see the guys, they work together now, they spend their off time together. It really is, it's really nice to see. Mutual respect is absolutely the norm, and I love the out-of-the-box thinking that they come up with for problem solving and dealing with different calls. And then absolutely from me down, our officers are the department's greatest asset. No amount of technology, no piece of equipment could ever replace the folks that we have here working in dock. And then we offer the best equipment, best training. We pride ourselves on that. We've got a healthy work-life balance for our folks. We want them to play hard when they're off, but we want them to give 110% when they're here working. And then last, through the adoption of the pay plan and our progressive career development program, you've allowed us to have one of the best compensation and packages available on the beach. So we're ranking right up there. Officers are always wondering what everyone else is doing, and I pulled figures from all the towns on July 1, and I'm very happy at where we are. And but as Drew and I have discussed, if an officer comes to me and their very first question is, how much can you pay me? Then we probably don't need to consider with that conversation, because that's not the person I want. Pay and benefits are a benefit for somebody who wants to be here for all the right reasons. So that's worked out really well for us. So all that to say, we have a couple of candidates in mind for our positions and hope to hold our formal interviews within the next week or so, and get two new folks on board so we can get our round-the-clock coverage, two-officer coverage done. So last, just leave you with a picture of Tim Armstrong, who's become he is my community guy now, and he has more of these pictures where folks have come by and he's taken the time. This was a young man who came by today, who was interested in the police car, and Tim dropped everything he was doing, spent 20 minutes with him, and they got a good picture together. So just indicative of the folks I have, and every one of them are just like Tim. So we're blessed to have them. Any questions?
Thanks,
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all.
Great report. Thank you.
Great.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you again to Chief Black for taking over some filming duties for me. You guys didn't know she was so talented, right? So for the first time tonight, I am not going to start talking about COVID, and I am so excited about that. We are still putting out messaging from the county. They still send out messaging every Tuesday, so we've coincided our e-news with that, and we will continue to do that. But for tonight, I am not giving any COVID updates. I am going to give summer event updates. Fitness on the Green has started. There's been 4 total weeks. Nothing has been rained out. It's really exciting. And we've had quite a great number of total participants coming to those events. Coming up next, well, we've already had one movie on the green that was pretty well attended, and Shrek and Moana are coming up next this month. And we are continuing to add things on throughout the rest of July and into August. This month we are doing the Chalk Art Fun. You guys might remember that from last year. We did that as a completely virtual event for engagement, and people would draw on their sidewalks or their driveways, and they would send us their photos, and we would vote and see who won. Well, we're gonna do it live this year. That was one of our biggest hits of the virtual engagement. So kids will be coming to the town hall and using the sidewalks on our property. So you guys should see some really great decorations. It'll be nice. It's Thursdays at 9:30 a.m. Unfortunately, we did cancel tomorrow mornings because of the upcoming storm, but we hope to get it started soon. And Betsy did put out a message that people who wanted to do it at home, even if they aren't here, if they're somewhere where it's not raining, they can still send us photos. Story time is also returning on the steps of the Keller Meeting Hall. And then in August, we do have concerts. The aquarium and Nature Out Loud are lined up. I didn't put the entire schedule here. It's pretty long, but people are very excited about being able to come back to events. The 4th of July window and display contest is going really well. I think I mentioned last time that we had the 27 participants, but we feel like that's really great because some of those include entire shopping centers. The contest and the voting wrap up on July 9th, and I forgot to look up how many votes we have, but it's really adding up. Everything's online for people to get to. We have it linked through all of our social media, all of our website. And then Betsy provided stores or contestants that wanted it with a QR code where people could scan that and vote as well. They're being advertised on our 4th of July page, and on Monday, July 12th, Betsy will have a very special social media presentation for the winner. So moving away from events a little bit, I did want to mention something that I brought up at the last meeting when we were talking about the personnel policy, and that's the intranet site that I've been working on for all of our staff. And so we did get that published on June 30th, so I met my goal because we had a lot of framework was already there, but we were waiting for some of the personnel policy items. It's still a work in progress. I've had quite a few staff members attempt to break it and or succeed in breaking some parts of it. Perfect though, that's what we need to fix it. I did take a few screenshots. It's a little, because it's within our intra-network, it's kind of hard to show in here, but there's a landing page. It looks like a traditional website, and people can click on any of these boxes to go in and see. Right now we have all of our policies and trainings and forms are available. All of our employee benefits and our employee assistance program, all of that information is available. And we're still working on updating an employee directory and a new hire handbook that Kay Nickens has been working very hard on, and will probably be useful to some of us older hires as well. But some of the things they can click on, so for this one, if they clicked on employee benefits, they'd be taken to another page where you can see here it's set up just like an external website would look, but it's only accessible to people who have a Town of Duck email address. And there are links to all of the companies that provide benefits for us. And same thing with the town policies and employee forms. There's links to the personnel policy, which I'll update. Some of those things when they are updated, links to standardized timesheets for administrative staff. Public safety, of course, have a standardized one that they use. Leave requests, secondary employment forms, and we are working on getting a list of trainings together. Those are nearly all online trainings, mostly offered through the league, I believe. And so we will have links to those, and working with Drew on a schedule for people to sign up for those. So it is still a work in progress, but I'm very happy with how much information is available on there now. And like I said, I'm getting feedback from people when they break links and things, but it's helpful to me to see how people use it and what kind of things they're looking for. Some more public information updates. As usual, we've been doing lots and lots of messaging. We have a very new audience every single week, a huge new audience every single week, and some of them have been coming to Duck for many years and some of them have not. So our typical messaging, and this is something I also mentioned last month, that we have set up a social media kind of calendar so that we are pumping out a lot of this information on a very regular basis so people know when to expect and what to expect from us. Ocean safety is always a big one. Big rules, beach rules are a big one. Pedestrian and bike safety, and dogs. I did just want to bring up dogs because that's another thing we discussed 2 months ago, was that I would work on doing some messaging about dogs on the beach in particular after we reviewed that. And we actually have had some people call in and talk to me about that. So the messaging we have started with is the removal of dog poop from the beach. So we currently have 3 graphics that we are using on social media. 2 of them are funny, kind of like this one, and then one is just a very cute one that has all these different dogs and says, your dog is welcome as long as one of you cleans up. So we've been putting those out. I haven't gotten a lot of response, just, people laughing, but hopefully we're bringing some attention to the idea that we would really like people to be responsible with their dogs and remove their poop bags from the beach totally. So if you guys hear anything in the community, I'd love to hear if it's helping. Okay, so, oh, and then I had a note to myself in here. I wouldn't say that I've been doing messaging about traffic, although Chief Ackerman did a really great job tonight, and I'm going to steal some of those statements for sure. We are getting a lot of direct questions about traffic and direct complaints about traffic. For me, it's come mostly through social media. So I have used some of the county messaging about the amount of people on the beach. I've also found that when I offer to speak to people directly via phone or email, that the complaints tend to disappear. So I think people are just very frustrated right now. So what you guys have all been waiting for, maybe not, is the Duck Jazz Festival. We did have an artist drop out very recently due to a health issue, which is okay. So I am almost done with the lineup because when people were given the chance to move some things around, they all wanted to move some things around. So we did a little bit of putting a puzzle together. And right now we are one artist signing shy of having our full lineup. So I have started to update the Facebook page and the website. I am going to introduce you to a few of the artists tonight, but I won't have on the website the times yet for all of the artists, maybe for another few weeks until I get that last contract signed. So we are continuing the plans that we had for 2020, and I won't go totally into them. I know we talked about them last year, but the idea last year was that it was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. There was also an opportunity to sign up for a green travel certification from the Department of Environmental Quality through the state. Some other sustainability things, you know, in 2019 we ordered reusable wine tumblers and things like that. So, and some of our partners like Nags Head Hammocks that we've been working with were really on board to help us do some of those things. So we're going to stick with that this year. And the artists that we brought back and that we had booked for 2020 have a variety of sounds that have been sourced from all over the world, and quite a few of them are educators as well. And so they've all agreed to talk a little bit about where their type of jazz comes from or was influenced by, and kind of give that idea that, you know, we're all together in this world and music brings people together. I won't read this whole slide, it's pretty much what I just said, but working on the green travel certification, working on some other sustainable items, and reducing single-use plastic in particular. But I will introduce you to a few of our groups. And one of the things we talked about last year too was that I really wanted to make sure, because we were working on this theme that some people may love and some people may not love, is really taking some time to introduce the people who might be coming to the Jazz Festival to everyone's particular sound so that they know what to expect, when they might want to come get a seat, things like that. So I will be working really hard to have snippets or links to Spotify playlists and things like that where people can catch on to the sound and learn a lot more about the group before they come. So to start off with, the John Jorgensen Quintet. They are what is called gypsy jazz, although that is falling out of favor, that term. So it's often called world jazz now. And it has a Franco-American feel. It's very guitar heavy, but it's a really, really nice and chill sound. Basil and the Supernaturals. So the lead singer here, he was Syrian born and fell in love with jazz when he came to the United States. So his band has a very Chicago jazz sound, which is really interesting. So he has an American-influenced jazz sound, but he himself is Syrian. So going to be really interesting to hear him talk. And I've looked at some of his educational things. They're really great. The La Fiesta Latin Jazz Quintet. Obviously, this is Latin jazz. If you guys may not remember, but the Triangle Youth Jazz Ensemble, which came 2 years ago, they're an award-winning high school group that comes out of the Triangle area. They are directed by Dr. Greg Gelb, and this is his Latin jazz band. He also is going to be working with the high school to do their to do their workshop. And the high school is very excited about that because he spends his time working with high school students. Banda Magda is another really interesting band, very upbeat jazz, like the kind that'll get people dancing. She also has a very sustainable theme in her work, and so she really is looking forward to talking about her travels and how it's influenced her. They have members from Greece, Japan, Brazil, the United States, the UK, and Turkey, and she does sometimes sing in French or Greek, which is gorgeous. We have our Army band. Obviously, this is pending DoD approval, as it always is when we sign them up. This is the Ambassador's Jazz Tet, and you'll see the size there, and that's very important. Oftentimes when we've had military bands come in the past, they're quite large, and we've had to put them on the amphitheater stage, which is sometimes a shame because they're incredible bands, and there's not quite as many people can get there. So the Jazz Tet is the perfect size to go on the green, be on the main stage, and I'm very excited about that. And First Flight High School will also be returning, which is fantastic. And I will have budget and sponsorship updates to present next month in the name of the last band as soon as I get that signed off on. So that's all for me tonight. Does anyone have any questions?
Sounds great, Christian.
Yep.
Great report, and thanks for all the hard work on that.
Oh yeah, it's been, no, thank you guys for all the support and the patience while we tried to wade our way through COVID and then recover from COVID. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Christian.
I'll try to be the shortest of the reports. I know that won't disappoint many folks. You received from me this morning the report from Teresa. It's got the detailed information in it, and in front of you this evening is these graphs and this slide deck. I do want to highlight a few things, and I'm going to give my notes what. Sure, highlight the correct. So the news is all really good as we begin the process of closing out the fiscal year. The numbers you're going to see tonight are through the end of June, but the fiscal year isn't over because we're still waiting to receive additional payments, particularly of some of the state-collected local revenues that are run a month, 2, or 3 behind. So we're still going to be accruing those into fiscal 21 for a few months yet. This first graph is the same one we've shown you before, just shows you the cash on hand. We're about $1.3 million to the good compared to last year. So we got about $1.3 million more than we had last year at this time. I've talked to you before about how we manage our funds. We do have most of them invested in interest-bearing accounts. Interest-bearing is all relative in the current interest rate environment. The smaller green bar that you see in this graph is our operational checking account. The target for that is to try to maintain about 10% or no more than 10% of our cash there. Right now it's at 6.4% or about $600,000. So we're well within target there. And again, that will fluctuate month to month. We may get a little bit bigger or smaller depending on when we make a transfer to meet accounts payable demand. Revenue collected, and these accounts, these graphs are a little different than they have been in the past, trying to make some small tweaks and hopefully some improvements to make them more visible to you and to the audience that is maybe watching this. All the news is good. Ad valorem taxes, 99.8%. That's pretty darn good. $1,163 outstanding. it's just, it's amazing. I mean, that's an enviable collection rate for any unit of local government. So don't know what we're doing right, but we're doing it right. And thank you to the people that are paying their taxes on time. It is very helpful for planning. Sales tax, as you see, we're about 120% of budget. Real estate transfer tax, 162% of budget. So we've had a really good year in sales tax and in the transfer tax. Sales tax, again, we still have a couple of months worth of accruals to get. So that number will change, as will the occupancy tax number. The ones that fell short, if you will, the grant revenue, you see that at 39.4%. We anticipated getting grant revenue to be able to do the Living Shoreline project. That's the primary, that's the bulk of that. And because that project has been delayed pending the approval of the BRIC grant, all that has been now carried forward. So that's into fiscal 22. So that's why you see that as a lower number there. And everything else, it looked really good. Sales tax, up about 121,000 compared to the same period last year. Land transfer tax about a little over $250,000 ahead of where we were last year. So really good, solid numbers. Just outperforming budget. The utility tax, again, I talked about that before. We're going to fall a little short of budget there. Again, not significant. It's about $22,000 difference. So we're in good shape. This graph just shows how things stack up in these revenue classifications. And this shows the darker bar is the actual collected in fiscal 21. The light bar in the middle is the budget, and then the lighter bar to the left there is the actual collected in the prior fiscal year. So it does. I was showing these in two different graphs, and I was a little confused. This puts it all in one place and hopefully makes it a little easier for the consumer of this information. So revenue was really good this year, again, outperforming budget, which is good news. Expenditures, this is by department. Expenditures were all within budget. IT is a little bit out. It's a de minimis amount. It's 107% of a small budget. So we were just a little bit over there. That won't, Teresa doesn't believe that will result in an audit finding. There was some additional work that the vendor had to do, and then they failed to bill us until last month for another month prior in this fiscal year. So that's where we got a little bit behind the 8 ball with them. But all in all, the expenditures are within budget when you look at it in the macro. And this graph just does the same thing for you by department. The darker bar, again, is the amount spent in fiscal 21. The middle bar is the budget, and then the lighter bar to the left is the expenditure in the prior fiscal year, in fiscal 20.
Drew, are these expense numbers reflective of the chart of accounts changes you made, or is that going to be in the new budget?
So, yeah,
like, for instance, moving workers' comp out of the governing body.
Good question. No. So this is the last fiscal year. Fiscal 21. The changes that we've made in the chart of accounts and where expenditures are made will take effect with the fiscal 22 budget. So you'll see that reflected in future reports.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Quick question while we're stopping you for questions.
Anytime.
The charts that you've given us so far where we haven't collected all of the revenue, and I guess it would apply to the expenditures as well, will we see the same month reflected next month when all of the accruals are in? Will we be able to have the advantage of this kind of graph for the end of the fiscal year at some point?
Yes, at some point. So once, as Teresa works on the financial statements and works on closing out, we will provide information to you. I think in the past you've gotten it in data form, but we'll try to do something graphically for council and for the public to see as well.
Yeah, it's really a nice snapshot. And
Yeah.
I mean, it may take a couple months, like you said, or longer, depending on the accruals and all that.
It will.
Yeah.
But yeah, so next month we'll basically be hitting reset and be reporting how we're doing in fiscal '22. You will be seeing some changes as you look at our website in how we're reporting things to the public. Again, trying to be a little more transparent and a little more graphical than we have been with the information that Teresa prepares that we put on the website is fantastic. I like pictures, and I think that it helps people digest the information, and if they want the details, we'll still obviously provide the level of detail that we have been, but trying to do something in a form of a dashboard that council or any member of the public can just go and look at and just get an idea of how we're doing with a quick look.
Fabulous.
So some of those changes will be coming to the website and making some other changes to the financial reports that we provide to you. Just, again, trying to make things as clear and as easy to digest as we can for you and for the public, but for you because you are ultimately the fiduciaries. You're responsible. So we want to be sure that you have the information you need regarding your town's finances.
Drew, one other question for you. The monthly cash balance, which we see that every month, how does that relate to the fund balance?
Fund balance is a part of that, but so this is just cash. We're not reporting on, so we report on fund balance once a year as part of the audit, because that requires all the accruals coming in, and then what's encumbered against the cash or the fund balance. So it's apples and oranges, but the fund balance is within the cash balance.
But in the trial balance, don't we carry the fund balance and the trial balance every month? I mean, could that be reported?
We can report a fund balance, which will be the last audited fund balance, which will be the number that will come from the last audited financial statements. That's where that comes from.
But the detail on the trial balance we used to get always had, the state required fund balance and then had fund balance in there.
I can look at it and see how it was calculated. It'd be interesting to know. I can certainly look at it. I've not seen that done before.
Do you recall that? Anybody else recall that?
I don't. Well, I think,
The trial balance?
I think when we've looked at it before, we definitely have tried to separate out the encumbered and the, and I hear what, I'm kind of curious as to, I have to look back and see what we were getting, because.
Well, remember, we used to get the trial balance by account number. Remember, it was like 4 or 5 pages long?
Right, but right, and then, but that isn't like the true picture because it doesn't include the encumbrances, is I guess what I'm hearing. It's
Well, I
more.
understand that, yeah.
Yeah.
I can work with Lori and see if I can get a look at what was provided to council in the past, because it'd be interesting to see how that was calculated. And then just, again, this is just trying to graphically represent expenditures versus revenue to show how things fluctuate during the year. We don't take our budget and divide it by 12 and have a monthly budget. It's just, our operation doesn't work that way. Our revenues don't work that way, and certainly our expenditures don't. You can see December is a huge month for revenue and for expenditures. Revenues, obviously, that's when we're getting the bulk of our real estate tax revenue. The expenditures, because that's when our debt service principal payment is due for the beach nourishment. And then this just shows, this chart does the math of that one. All right, so that just shows you the months that we run ahead, more revenue than money out. Just trying to graphically show how things cycle, peaks and valleys through the year. And then this is just the comparison. this fiscal year to last, the darker bar being the fiscal 21, the lighter fiscal 20. Just showing the percentage collected revenue. Again, grants fell shorter than expected this year, and then revenue expended. So we expended less than we did last year as a percentage of budget. Any questions on the financial? I will report, so we do have still, we're calling it open until filled, so the finance and HR administrator position, we have 5 applicants for that, so we'll be reviewing those applications and begin the process of interview and selection. And obviously, if something comes in between now and when we fill the position that's it's a extremely viable candidate, we'll certainly include her or him in that. But I believe that we have some candidates within that pool that we can consider. So hopefully you will get that filled within the next couple of months.
You're more anxious than us.
Sir?
You're more anxious than us on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, I think the person most anxious is Lori. Lori does a lot now of what this person will do. It's the weekly or every other week accounts payable. It's the payroll stuff, and it's not, Lori's very capable of handling that. She's got a lot of other things to do, and to have someone really focused on that routine task, plus some of the financial reporting and some of the other kind of stuff that we want to do. Again, the goal really is to be as transparent as we can with all of the financial stuff that we do. Obviously, not only to you all, but to those that we serve too. It's their money. We want to be sure that we're reporting it clearly to them.
Great.
Thank you, Drew.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, going on to item number 9, the mayor's agenda. I have a few things this evening. This week I had the chairman, mayors, and others meeting on COVID. We're still meeting on a monthly basis. A little bit of concern actually came out of the meeting from a standpoint of, if you saw this week, the number for the cases was 27. It's kind of trending up. And although the tests are going down and the positivity rate is going down, they're starting to see the Delta variant, which is obviously a concern because non-vaccinated and or single vaccinations may not be effective against that Delta variant. Right now, the county has 62% one shot, at least one shot, and 59% fully vaccinated. So we still have a high level of population here in Dare County that have not received vaccinations. We also had a lot of discussion, John Farley, the superintendent of schools, was on there, a lot of discussion with respect to what the schools are going to do as they reopen and whether they're going to be full classrooms or a hybrid or what it's going to be. So there's a lot of discussion going on, and actually even some bills pending in the General Assembly with respect to the schools. So even though that COVID has died down, there was still a lot of interesting discussion around COVID. I had my mayor's lunch meeting on July 19th, well, actually coming up on July 19th, and actually we're having Representative Bobby Hanick join us for lunch that day, which will be good because we'll be able to talk to him about a lot of local issues. Interestingly enough, he actually heads up the subcommittee on municipalities in the General Assembly, so he's the right person to be talking about issues with that, with respect to that. So if anybody has an issue that they might want discussed, please let me know. Right now, obviously, a lot of the concern is that the General Assembly right now is taking more responsibility away from municipalities than we'd like them to do, or at least attempting to. So it ought to be an interesting roundtable discussion with at lunch that day.
I'm sorry, Mayor, could you repeat what he's in charge of, Bobby Hayes?
He's in charge of, I don't know if it's a committee or a subcommittee on cities and towns.
Oh, okay, city.
Within the General Assembly.
Interesting that
Yeah.
Currituck doesn't have one, so, but that's good that he's local and, you know.
I've had a couple discussions with him on a couple issues where the league asked me to contact him, and the league was kind of in outs with him. So right now, the league is got some work to do with Representative Hoenig. Hopefully I can be that bridge between them.
Well, on that note about Hoenig, I think what he can do to help keep the communications between the counties good as we approach the emergency management phase of things would be something to be really great to touch on, to encourage the, Currituck Board of Commissioners and the Dare County Board to really work together on, messaging. I think they tried to do that last year, and, it's always something that's good to talk about. So that would be something.
Bob Wood will be at the meeting too.
Great.
So, which is good.
Great.
I have the League Executive Committee meeting on July 12th virtually. And this morning we had an unplanned meeting. I've been sending you the updates on Tropical Depression Elsa. And we had a short meeting this morning. No emergency measures were really taken, but the track has obviously moved westward. Our biggest fear is going to be, we'll be on the east side, so obviously tornadoes and/or thunderstorms, ocean, but probably the biggest threat is going to be rain, but the biggest threat will probably be possibility of some south side flooding as that Elsa passes by, and we'll know that about this time tomorrow night. They're expecting it to hit Duck between 8 and 11 tomorrow night. And any other further updates I'll get on that, I will obviously pass along to you. And that's all I have to do, report tonight. So we'll go to item number 10, council members' agenda. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to compliment the town on the job applications that I've seen posted in the newspaper, because I think they really have been nicely written. I'm not sure exactly if it was crafted by just one person, but I think when you read those application requests for applications, it really does evoke a nice sense about what the town is, and made me really proud to read that those opportunities exist, and painted a really nice picture about the values, and I thought it was really well done. So I just want to thank you for that, and thank the staff in general for all the hard work and keeping us all informed. Always trying to encourage as much information out to the general public as possible, making it as palatable as possible and understandable as we can. So I really appreciate all the work that the staff is doing toward that end as well. That's all I have.
Thank you, Monica. We'll go around the table. Councilmember Whitman.
I have nothing this evening.
Councilmember Cavanis.
I just wanted to say the town looks great. So thank you to all the businesses and the shopping centers that took the time in the middle of the summer when they have a million other things to do, that with flags and banners and buntings, and all the shops that participated in the window contest, and patriotic foods and drinks. And I know it was a lot of extra work, but it looks really fun when you drive through town. So just wanted to give a shout out to everybody who went the extra mile during a very busy summer. So thank you. And thank you to staff that made that all happen.
Thank you, Nancy. Councilmember Mooney?
Nothing for me.
Thank you, Rob. At this time, I'll open up public comments, additional public comments. If anyone in the public wants to make comments, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. There being no one, we will close public comments. Is there any other business to come before the council this evening? There being none, I'll remind the council our next scheduled meeting will be the regular meeting on Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor of adjourning, please say aye. 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 The meeting is adjourned.